Solar by Green Greg here. Is your pool too cold? You know, if you're like a lot of homeowners, you and your family are not using your pool as much as you like. You got this piece of paradise and you're paying for maintaining a pool that's not even being used and enjoyed by you and your family. What's the point of that? That's just a waste of money. So in this video, let's talk about the pros and cons and the costs to heat a pool. By the way, this is the Ultimate Buyer's Guide, part 2 of 4. If you have not seen part 1, I'll leave a link at the end, but go ahead and continue with part 2. So what's the best way to heat a pool? The best pool heating options are a solar pool heater, a pool heat pump, a gas heater, and propane. Now, when I talk about solar pool heating, I need to clarify something here. If you look online, you'll see a lot of, do-it-yourself systems, such as the black hose trick, or you'll see these portable solar panels I have here on the right-hand side, or the dome-shaped panels. Those are made for smaller above-ground pools. Here I'm talking about, mainly in-ground pools, larger pools, and I'm talking about solar using a professionally engineered solar pool heating system, okay? And a high-quality, professionally installed system, not just some sort of cheapy solar panels that are bought online, okay? Because there is a difference in amount of heat, and there's a difference in amount of durability. So, as I mentioned in the Ultimate Buyer's Guide, part 1 of 4, there's 7 things you must know before buying a pool heater. And, with so many factors, you may wonder, geez, how can pool heating costs be determined? And truthfully, I wanted to do this video for such a long time, but I was trying to find a way to do this without getting too much bogged down in some complicated math about BTUs and raising the BTUs and this sort of stuff, but wanted to explain, again, the pros and cons, what the costs are of the different types of pool heaters. So I did some research to try to find some third-party data. I was so excited to find this report from the U.S. Department of Energy. And they published pool heating cost using an electric heat pump. And as you can see here, they have different cities. I was like, wow, this is great. This is great data. And then I started digging into some details. So as I outlined on the top, Miami, they've got 12 months of pool heating season. Now, I actually live in the Tampa Bay area. We are about 4 hours north of Miami. And so I can tell you that here in the Tampa Bay area, people heat their pool roughly about 9 to 10 months a year. The reason being is, we get July and August, it gets so darn hot. Usually the pool's already warm enough, they don't have to heat. And we do have sometimes a cooler month where it might be in the 50s and very windy, where people don't even want to go out. So that might not apply to Miami, but still, Miami being a lot warmer than Tampa, maybe 10 months is a more accurate figure, or maybe even 9 months you need to heat your pool, but not 12 months. So that threw me off a bit. And then I looked at the pool temperature ranges. So they've got 78, 80, and 82. And I thought, okay, it's great they got different temperatures. However, I would have liked to see a wider temperature range. The reason being is people aren't going to care about 2 degrees, right? And probably not even notice 2 degrees so much. But 5 degrees, people will notice, right? I think you can agree. So I'd have rather seen something like, 75 degrees, 80 degrees, and then 85. It'd be a more realistic temperature range, okay? So that was a problem for me. And then I looked at, okay, with a cover, they're showing roughly about an 80% decrease in the cost to heat a pool with an electric heat pump. 80%. I don't think this is realistic, and I don't know how many hours they were expecting to have the pool not covered, okay? And whether it's going to be uncovered during the afternoon or whether it's uncovered at night when it's a cooler time and you would lose more heat. So I don't know how they got with and without cover. But my experience has been it's not going to be an 80% savings. I don't think so. I believe in pool covers. I just don't believe it's going to be 80%. So that was the problem I had with Miami and those other factors. And then for kicks, I outlined New York State, which is obviously a cooler climate. And there they got a 5-month pool season. I think that's probably more realistic. But again, I still have a problem with the temperature ranges. Again, I'd like to see wider temperature ranges for different desired pool temperatures. And then again, with a cover, I don't think you're going to save 80%. I just don't. It's not been my experience. So when people ask, what months do you need a pool heater in Florida and some other states, this can vary quite a bit based on your local weather, and it could vary based on, hey, what's a perfect pool temperature for you, right? So, and then the other factors that I talked about in the video number 1, which is, what's the other factors they left out, which was, what is the pool size? Very obvious. How many gallons, how much surface area? Is it shaded? Is it caged? There's a lot of factors they left out of this report that's going to affect a pool heating cost. And I don't know how they accounted for those things. So unfortunately, after I looked at all this and dug into the details, I wasn't quite as excited, but I kept on digging. And then I see here they also have a comparison for a gas heater versus an electric pool heat pump. And I thought, wow, this is great, awesome. They got this comparison. And there's some factors too, by the way, about the efficiency of the heat pump or gas heater as well, which I'm not going to dig into here. But then I looked at, well, what energy costs are they using? Well, for a gas heater, they're using a cost of, $1.09 per therm, which is about 100 cubic feet of gas, or 3 cubic meters. Now, I looked up in 2023, the cost per therm is $2.79, so almost triple. And then likewise, for the electric cost, you're using 0.13 per kilowatt hour. Now, here in the Tampa Bay area, currently we're seeing about 0.19 with taxes and fees for the first 1,000 kilowatt hours, and the rates keep going up, of course. So I don't know when they've done this report. I can't even find a date on it. But obviously, the electric and gas costs are just way off. So it's another reason why these figures are off. I'll still leave a link to the report in the pinned comments just in case you want to take a look at it just for giggles. It's still kind of interesting. But unfortunately, the actual dollar figures to heat a pool are not reliable. So then I tried to find out if there's any online calculators. And I did find one such example online. This company makes electric pool heat pumps. And so it might be a bit biased, but I thought, let me just run the numbers anyway and see what they come up with. And as you can see here, I put in Tampa Bay area. I put from March to December, so 10 months. I put a rough size area of a pool that is a good size pool, 82 degrees. So after I put in those specifications, this calculator came up with an annual heating cost for an electric pool heat pump of $351. $351 annually. And I can just tell you from personal experience, from talking with homeowners, that's not even close. To heat a pool up for 10 months, most homeowners have told me in the Tampa Bay area, for a pool about this size, that depending on how much temperature they need to increase the pool water, between $150 to $200, sometimes even more. So that's just 1 month, okay? So there's no way it's $351. Again, I don't know what sort of electric cost they're using or how they came up with this number or when's the last time it was updated. But it was way off. And then I tried a couple other pool pump manufacturers as well to see if they would have a more accurate number. And I've tried, the leading pool heater heat pump companies, and they all had numbers that were just way off. You know, again, some of this may be because these calculators might be very old, and we all know that, hey, electric prices, you know, 10 years ago or even 5 years ago were a lot different, right? We all know it's different. And the same thing with gas prices. We know everything's gone up. Not just lately, but just gradually over years, but particularly now in 2023, we've seen everything go up a lot, right? So, unfortunately, I could not find, you know, reasonable third-party data that would give me everything I wanted. So then I was like this guy, you know, what am I going to do here? Again, because I don't want to get bogged down in BTUs and temperature rise and all this complex math, right? So I was trying to figure out how can I do this to the best of my ability. I want to give homeowners the most accurate information possible where I can, right? That's why I was trying to search for third-party data. But unfortunately, I'm left in this case to rely on some of my experience in my talks with homeowners. So I've been in the solar industry, including pool heating, for 16 years. And I've talked to homeowners, some of them who actually have a gas heater or have a heat pump to heat their pool. And, you know, the costs are too expensive for them to run the pool heat pump or the gas heater. And so they're not using a pool as much as they like. So I'm going to use a blend of my experience along with that report and also make some adjustments for the energy costs now that are in play in 2023. And try to do my best to give you the most accurate figures I can there. But we'll also talk about the pros and cons of certain types of heaters. So let's get to it. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to give you the pros and cons of solar pool heater versus a pool heat pump versus a gas heater versus propane. And by the way, I'm just going to give you some general figures here, the pros and cons, and I'm going to break it down into specific dollars here a bit later, okay? But first, let's start with the equipment costs. Solar tends to be the lowest cost in terms of equipment. The gas and heat pump are usually about tied, and then propane is the highest cost. And I'll talk a bit about that more later. Next, the energy cost. So solar is the least amount of cost. The heat pump is second lowest. The gas heater is the next lowest. And propane by far is the highest cost way to heat a pool. The maintenance. Now, every pool heating system is going to need some maintenance, but solar doesn't have any moving parts, so it's usually the lowest cost maintenance. The heat pump, gas, and propane all have some moving parts, and so they tend to have more service calls and cost more money. Is the operational cost predictable? Yes, for solar, because you're buying the equipment, whatever the sun can provide to heat the water is free. With these other types of heaters, the pool heat pump, the gas heater, or propane heater, the costs are unpredictable because energy cost, as we all know, goes up and down, and primarily it goes up over time more than it goes down, right? And so you don't know how much it's going to cost to heat your pool. Lifetime. So a solar pool heater, if it's a high quality one that's professionally installed, they normally last 8 to 10 years if it's a high quality system, okay? Maximum maybe 20 years. A heat pump, usually 4 to 5 years I find they last in Florida. You know, there's some that are very expensive heat pumps that they'll warranty up to 10 years. And gas heaters, same sort of thing, about 4 to 5 years. Max might be 10 years if you buy a real high-end one, and the same for propane. Warranty on equipment. So for solar pool heaters, usually it's 10 to 12 years. I know one manufacturer does a lifetime warranty on their solar panels. A heat pump is usually 1 to 3 years, maybe 10 years if you buy the real high-end one or get a warranty. Gas and propane heaters tend to be about 3 years, okay? Time to heat a pool. So with solar, usually it's about 5 to 7 days. It's a gradual heat. A heat pump is about 5 days. A gas or propane heater can heat a pool in about 3 days. Okay. All right, swim season. So with solar, depending on what climate you're in, if you're in a tropical state like Florida, 9 to 10 month swim season roughly, depending on different factors like the weather, desired temperature, and so on. But even up north, it can extend your swim season by a few months in the spring and fall. A heat pump, the swim season, as long as it's over 50 degrees Fahrenheit, what happens to heat pumps is they get less efficient as it gets more cold outside. Okay? A gas heater or propane heater, those can be run anytime, okay, and any weather. So as you can see here, when people ask me, are solar pool heaters worth it? Well, as you can see, solar has most of the advantages as far as equipment costs, energy costs, maintenance costs, operating costs, lifetime cost, warranty equipment. The only thing it lacks is the time to heat a pool is longer, but you don't care about that anyways, because if it's free to heat the pool from the sun, you're just going to run the solar whenever you can. So I think that's not very much of a disadvantage. In the swim season, yes, it could be a bit limited because of the weather, but what I find is most people don't want to swim when it's like 50 degrees or colder outside anyways. Most people, okay? So, again, the time of heat and the swim season, yeah, gas and propane do have that advantage, but also cost a bit more. And you have to ask yourself if you're really going to care about those things, if you're really going to swim in that cold of a weather. And then one other disadvantage I do have to mention about solar is you do have to have a sunny roof, preferably south, west, or east if you're in the northern hemisphere. My friends in the Australia, you'll want a north-facing roof, of course, or east-west. So that's a quick check-off of the pros and cons. Hey, if you found this content valuable so far, before we continue, hey, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe, hit that thumbs up. This lets YouTube know that this content is valuable, and it suggests this content to more homeowners like you. Thank you so much. Let's continue. So let's talk about the specific cost to heat a pool for 10 years. Okay, with solar, the average cost is about $5,750 with a range of $3,000 to $8,000 depending on how many solar panels, the difficulty of install, and so on. There's no additional cost. That's usually an all-in cost. As far as energy costs for solar, it just runs a small temperature controller. It's just a display with a motorized valve. That's usually about $10 a year. So with a 4% inflation, that's probably about $148 over a 10-year period. As far as maintenance, over 10 years, you'll probably have a few service calls. They're usually around $200 each, let's say, so $600 there over 10 years. The replacement cost after 5 years, you should not have to replace the equipment. It should last longer than that. So for the total ownership cost over 10 years, solar is about $6,500, okay, over 10 years to heat your pool. Is the cost predictable? I would say it's pretty predictable because you're not worrying about energy cost. Electric pool heat pumps, the equipment costs with installation, about $4,750 average. Additional cost, you have to run a 220 volt line to the pool pump area. Most people do not have 220 volts there, so you have to get an electrician and run that electrical. That's about $700 roughly. And then the energy to run the heat pump for 10 years. So what I figured was, on average about, for a decent sized pool, for a large pool, roughly, $250 a month, about $2,400 a year roughly. With 4% inflation on electric, and we all know electric's been increasing, 9%, 12%, 15%. We got one utility here in Florida, they announced a 19% increase in electric rates, okay? So electric rates are going up a lot more than this. but hopefully they won't go up that much in the future. But I'm being very modest with 4% inflation, by the way. But I'm figuring with 4% inflation, about $28,814 over 10 years. Okay, very modest. Maintenance, you're going to use a couple service calls, so let's call that $500. A heat pump may require annual coil cleaning, just like you have for air conditioner. So that might be a couple of your service calls. Again, these normally last about 4 or 5 years, so you have to replace your equipment. That's $47.50. So the cost over 10 years is about $39,514 to run a heat pump for 10 years. That's just huge. And are the costs to operate a pool heat pump predictable? No, they're not. Again, because we have no idea exactly where the electric costs are going to be, 5 years, 10 years from now. We don't know, right? I just being very modest here with a 4% increase. It might go up a lot more than that. We just don't know. So let's look at a gas heater now. So the equipment costs are about $42.50 on average. Additional, maybe to run a gas line, $700. The energy cost over 10 years. And again, I'm using a 4% inflation rate and heating a pool for 10 months a year that we do in Tampa area. I'm figuring about $50,425. And again, I'm using a 4% inflation rate. Just like electric, we've seen gas prices increase a lot more than that. I'm being very modest here, and we just don't know how much it's going to increase. Maintenance, you may have a couple service calls. Let's call that $450. You'll have to replace the equipment after 5 years. That's another $42.50. So the cost to heat a pool with a gas heater is over $60,000. $60,000. That's huge. I know the cost predictable. No, they're not. Because again, we all don't have a crystal ball into where gas prices are going to be, right? Even 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, we don't know. We don't know. And then let's look at propane. Okay, so for a propane heater, again, $42.50. Additional cost, you might have to bury the tank, and then that's going to require a site survey, permitting just for the tank and so on. That can get expensive. If you need to do that, that can run about $17.50, give or take some. Propane tends to be a lot more expensive than gas. So I'm figuring about $9,800 a year. I know it sounds crazy, but yes, propane is crazy cost. That's over $117,000 over 10 years. I mean, geez, that's like a retirement plan. And then maintenance, we're going to have a couple of service calls, say $450. We're going to have to replace the equipment again after 5 years. That's $42.50. And so the cost to heat a pool for 10 years with propane is over $128,000.